I'm Jim O'Callahan, President and CEO of the South County EDC. I want to thank you all for joining us for now what is, I guess, the fourth or fifth of our elected officials webinars. We tried to move our programming from a one-day event that we've historically held and everybody's loved to being able to just make sure that we could continue the dialogue with the elected officials that help shape our communities and help all of you be successful. And we have that back and forth conversation on a regular basis. It's great to be able to do it virtually, if not in person. We are very thankful to Cox Communications and Carl Leal, one of our board members, for helping sponsor parts of the series and especially today's program. So I am not going to speak very long, but I do want to thank both our mayor-elect, who has been our assemblyman for all these years, for all of your amazing efforts that we have shared together and will continue to moving forward. And Supervisor Cox, thank you for making me feel extremely welcome in your final couple of months here and trying to help me learn the ropes of San Diego. So I appreciate that. And I am going to hand this over to our chair of the board, John Moot, and let him introduce the program.
Well, thank you, Jim. Welcome all of you to our double header today. For those of you who missed the last board of directors meeting of 2020 this morning, we had some great presentations by the district attorney and the head of the county water authority. And if you missed it, hopefully you can check in with the minutes of the meeting or talk to one of the members. It was outstanding presentations. And of course, this afternoon we have our bookends. We have Supervisor Greg Cox, after a distinguished career leaving office, and Mayor-elect Todd Gloria, after a distinguished career that included a brief stint as mayor of San Diego, now coming back to serve a full term and maybe many more. I've had the pleasure of knowing Greg for a long time. I used to live in his neighborhood, and his daughters used to babysit my children. And I never missed an opportunity when I was picking up or dropping off one of his girls to talk to Greg about the problems and issues I was having as an elected official. And I must say, if I was half as calm and wise, as patient as Greg was, I would have considered myself a successful elected official. As happy as we are to see and excited as we are to see Norma Vargas come to be our supervisor in the South County, as sad as we are to see Greg leave us, and he will indeed be sorely missed. And to whoever gerrymandered the city of San Diego to run a line down San Diego Bay, I want to give my greatest thanks, because it has given us many mayors, including now the new mayor-elect of San Diego, Todd Gloria, who is a citizen and heart of the South Bay, and is certainly a great welcome addition to the mayors participating in South County EDC and representing the southern region of our county. And with that, I would like to turn it over to our sponsor, Carla Leal of Cox Communication, for the formal introduction of our distinguished speakers.
Thanks, John. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us virtually from the comfort of your home or office via your internet connection, hopefully from Cox, but we'll see. As stated, my name is Carla Leal, and it is my pleasure to introduce two distinguished leaders as part of today's elected officials webinar series. So first up, we have Supervisor Greg Cox. Since joining the San Diego County Board of Supervisors in 1995, Supervisor Greg Cox has been dedicated to improving the public safety, health, and quality of life for all families in our region. He represents more than 631,000 residents of the vibrant multicultural neighborhoods of the 1st District. A tireless champion for South County, Greg Cox resides in his hometown of Chula Vista. Supervisor Cox began his public service career as a teacher in the Sweetwater Union High School District. He was elected to the City of Chula Vista City Council and then elected to 2 terms as mayor of Chula Vista. Since he became supervisor, San Diego County government has been consistently recognized as one of the best managed counties in America. Supervisor Cox oversees the region's $6.27 billion budget and more than 17,000 employees. His career has been defined and guided by the county's motto that the noblest motive is the public good. That has earned him an outstanding reputation for leading nonpartisan local government and bringing people together to work on issues and challenges facing our region. His style of leadership has made him the only elected official in California to have been elected by his peers as president of the League of California Cities, and by supervisors statewide as president of the California State Association of Counties, where he still serves on the board of directors. In January 2020, Greg Cox was elected by his peers to serve as chairman of the San Diego County Board of Supervisors. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming Supervisor Greg Cox with snaps or a wave. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for that very generous introduction. And, you know, I kind of feel like this is like New Year's Eve, and we've got the 2 contrasts between Father Time leaving in 2020 and then with the mayor-elect stepping forward. It's going to be, I think, a great opportunity for the city of San Diego to have Todd in a leadership position. And he's not a baby, but you know, the picture of him compared to the picture of me that was up a little while ago, I mean, there's a big contrast in me to that picture versus, I mean, he looks the same. That guy's never changes. But thank you for the opportunity to say a few words, and then I'll look forward to listening to Todd's comments. You know, as was pointed out, I'm going to wrap up almost 26 years of service on January 4th on the Board of Supervisors. And I have to tell you, it's been an extreme honor and pleasure for me. I came in a little bit different than most people. I actually got appointed when Brian Bilbray was elected to Congress the first time. So it was kind of one of those things, one day you're a private citizen, I have my own governmental relations consulting business, and the next day, boom, you're in the office. But I've put together an incredible team of people, staff that work with me over the years, and they have just done a tremendous job. And to the extent that I've been successful at all, I have to really give credit to the staff that we've been able to assemble over the years. You know, this has obviously been a very difficult year for everyone. And it's particularly true here at the County of San Diego, where we have our primary responsibility in regards to public health and enforcing not only state public health orders, but enforcing our own public health directors' public health orders. And clearly, it's been a difficult year for business. A lot of businesses are hurting. We know that. A number of them, unfortunately, have basically closed up shop because they haven't had any alternative. We have tried to see what we can do to somewhat soften the impact of COVID-19. I know previously we've approved over $27 million in business stimulus loans. And then just last week, I worked with Supervisor Fletcher to bring forward to our colleagues a request which was unanimously funded to add another $20 million. And that's going to be basically carved up. Each supervisor will have $4 million available that they can provide additional stimulus grants, particularly to businesses that have been adversely impacted from going from the red tier to the purple tier. Although other businesses, you know, certainly can apply, and I know a number of them have previously received grants, but you know, I would encourage you to get on our website and take a look at the criteria. Our goal is to get it out as quickly as we can, and we've authorized our Chief Administrative Officer, once they get recommendations from each of the supervisors, they're prepared to move forward as quickly as they can to get that money out, because we know it's a real time-sensitive issue right now. And I guess, you know, we hope that there'll be some additional action at the federal level to come up with some additional CARES Act funds or federal stimulus money. That could certainly provide some additional help. not only to the cities and the county as we deal with the impacts of COVID-19 and continue the testing that we're doing, and all the other things we're doing in a preventative type of an effort. But I know that there's still businesses that could even use more help. So we're going to focus on that. Excuse me. You know, over the years, I've had a chance to work very closely with the South County EDC. In fact, I remember working with Brian Bilbray and Joe Conti, who at that time was president of Southwestern College. I see kindred there. And several others, including Tony McCune, excuse me, and Marilyn Lassman, to really create the South County EDC. And as I left as mayor of Chula Vista, I was very proud of the fact that we had an ongoing operation, and very grateful that for a brief period of time, I was actually your first executive director. And I have to tell you, over the last 30 plus years now, it's been really gratifying to see what has happened with South County EDC, the successes you've had, the focus that you've had, the things that you've accomplished. Excuse me, I'm gonna take a quick sip of hot water. It's not vodka, I wish it was. But you know, the South County EDC has done great things, particularly in East Otay Mesa and Otay Mesa, the success on the infrastructure, the cross-border terminal, the support for the Chula Vista Bayfront. All of these things have really been critical to putting South County on the map and to make people realize that South County is really going to be, I think, the real growth destinator for the San Diego County region in the years ahead. As I look back on my career on the Board of Supervisors, I have to tell you, we've done a lot of things in our foster care system. We used to have 7,000 kids in our foster care system. Now we're down below 2,400. We built the San Pasqual Academy to help kids in foster care. We've been working on the development of the East Otay Mesa. And I think with all the infrastructure improvements, you're going to see a lot of activity in East Otay Mesa in the years ahead. Very proud of the blue economy. You know, it was one of those things, I was reading one of the local media, this is about 3 years ago, and excuse me, they were pointing out that there were some fishermen that were having a hard time working with the county because our Department of Environmental Health was looking at their desire to have a fish market as kind of like a farmer's market. And on the other hand, the Port District was not being very accommodating on allowing them to sell fresh fish on the piers down by the tuna harbor. So I called up Bob Nelson, who at that time was the president or chair of the Port Commission. And literally within 2 weeks, we were able to cut through all the red tape. And now as a result of that, and certainly the support of Senator, at that time, Speaker Tony Atkins, we've been able to develop a program where the tuna harbor dockside market now is extremely successful, and communities up and down the coast of California can do the same thing where they can sell fresh food, fish directly to the public without having to be tied into a restaurant. The improvements to the infrastructure of the border is really important, and we're glad to see the things that have transpired at San Ysidro and Otay Mesa, and now Otay Mesa East. The improvements that are going to be coming to the Tijuana River Valley. I remember a year ago, September, I was able to set up a meeting with the Office of Management and Budget, with the Assistant Director of the Environmental Protection Agency, the Chair of the Council on Environmental Quality, and representatives from the President's Intergovernmental Affairs. We had Mayor Faulkner, Mayor Dedina, Mayor Bailey, myself, and Gary Benelli representing the Port District, really lay out what our needs were. And the fact that, we've had this raw sewage for 91 years. And as a result of that meeting, and certainly the support of a lot of other people, we've gotten $300 million to begin to address that problem once and for all. I've been proud of the fact we've been able to work on ecotourism through the work on the Bayshore Bikeway. It's going to be done in the next 4 or 5 years. All the money is there to complete it. It's going to be up to Todd to make sure that that happens. Our regional parks, the Living Coast Discovery Center, and many, many other things, including trails in Tijuana River Valley, Otay River Valley, Sweetwater River Valley. Those are the projects that I'm really, really proud of. And the 3 libraries that are in my supervisorial district that are run by the county are all brand new and state of the art. So I have to tell you, yeah, excuse me. It has been an honor and a pleasure to serve on the Board of Supervisors for almost 26 years, 14 and a half years, 5.5 years on this as a council member, and 9 years as mayor. It's been a great run, but it's time to turn it over to a younger generation, maybe a better representative of the district than I am as far as my background and ethnicity. But I know Nora's going to do a great job, and I'm still going to be around. I'm going to be involved with some nonprofits and helping to complete some of the projects I've got going. We're building a campground on the Tijuana River Valley, working with the Boy Scouts for a campground at Otay Lakes Park. So there's still things to do, but I want to thank you all for your support and for the opportunity to be with you this afternoon. John, you gotta unmute yourself.
I'm happy to jump in here. Carla, you don't have to worry about an introduction.
Are you sure? I prepared a written, you know it better than anyone.
Everyone just go to my Wikipedia page. Most of it's true. Check it out and take a look. Carla, I got probably the best introduction I give you. I am using Cox Internet to currently access this gathering. So, my connection's always stable and good. So thank you, Cox Communications, and Carla, thank you for your sponsorship of this event. Thank you, South County EDC, for this opportunity. And more than anything, thank you to my friend, Greg Cox. I'm glad he's getting some of that vodka/water at the moment to cure his throat. I have always admired Greg Cox a great deal. This business, as many of you can attest, is often filled with not the nicest of people. But Greg is not only one of the nicest people you'll meet, but he's also one of the most genuine and most effective people you'd meet. And as his public service, or at least this version of his public service, comes to an end, we certainly are a better region for his service. So I'm grateful to you, Greg, for the great example you've set to many of us when it comes to elected office. You're leaving some big shoes to fill. I think Nora Vargas is going to do a very, very, very good job filling those shoes. But nevertheless, you, sir, have done a phenomenal job, and I want to thank you for all that you've done for San Diego County.
Thank you, Todd.
And while I'd like to think that I'm the new guy, I think if you're like him again, you have seen me for many years as an aide to Congresswoman Davis, as a housing commissioner for the city, as a council member, council president, interim mayor, assembly member. I'm coming back again to do the mayor's job, and I couldn't be more excited. It is unquestionably a difficult time to do this work, but I think this, as you all know, is when it's probably most important to be at the table making decisions because the stakes are high, the resources are low, and we have to have the right set of priorities, not only to navigate the current crisis we find ourselves in, but to make sure that some silver lining can come out of this, that perhaps we can build this back better in some way and get out of this quickly. So while I don't necessarily know that I'm the totally new guy on the block, I'm definitely the new guy in this new job, and I'm really anxious to get started. And for those of you that don't pay close attention, the swearing in is next Thursday at 10 a.m. It will be virtual, so it's not going to be the large gathering as it commonly is at Golden Hall, but you all are welcome to tune in via the city's public access channel 24 or through the city's website, sandiego.gov. I appreciate the invitation to be here today. Some of you may not know that yesterday was the end of my time in the California legislature when we permanently adjourned session until next Monday when the new legislature is seated. So I'm actually in between jobs. So as a big nobody at the moment, I'm really grateful that you would care to hear a few words from a guy who's at least unemployed for about a little less than a week. And I conclude my time in the legislature so grateful for that opportunity. And to the extent that I had the opportunity to represent South Bay cities like Imperial Beach and Coronado, I'm deeply grateful to those communities for the opportunity to have been their voice in the legislature. I come back to San Diego, I think, with a lot of experience that will be beneficial to our region. I will candidly say that I didn't always think of the state as the best partner when I served in local government. And while it isn't always the best partner, I think that's often on us to figure out how to make them a better partner, recognizing that legislation will get passed, budgets will be adopted. Question will become whether or not we make sure that they align to benefit our priorities and our interests as San Diego County. And I think I know better how to do that after my 4 years in the legislature. And probably more importantly is the relationships that I've been able to build, not just with our local delegation, which I will tell you, we are well served by the San Diego state delegation, led of course by Senate President Pro Tem Tony Atkins, but whether it's individuals like Lorena Gonzalez and Ben Hueso, Shirley Weber, to the latest addition to the state legislative team, my successor, Chris Ward, I think we are in incredibly good hands. And of course, the relationships I've been able to build with Governor Newsom, Senator Harris, and others, I think will accrue to our benefit. There's a lot I can discuss about what we've done, but I think you're probably more interested in what we will do. And I think whenever talking with South County leaders like all of you, I think it's important for you to hear from the interim or the incoming mayor of the city of San Diego a recognition of the fact that the city of San Diego is a South Bay community, and that we must act like we're a South Bay community, working closely with our partners in Chula Vista, National City, Coronado, Imperial Beach, because we have shared responsibilities, shared needs, and shared constituents. And so you will see me actively involved, in my administration actively involved in South County issues, recognizing that we all have a role to play. And I really echo the comments of Chairman Cox in recognizing that there's so much already going on. And I look at the faces on my screen at the moment of people who are doing a lot of incredible stuff. But as he mentioned, I think there's so much even more potential in this community. And shame on us if we don't use this opportunity to make that potential real and use it to the benefit of our entire region. So how do I think we can do that? Well, first off, we of course have to defeat the pandemic. And I'm hopeful that this change in administrations at both the city and at the county level will allow for a reset in the relationship between these two key agencies, and to make sure that we hopefully build a stronger relationship where we can be more collaborative when it comes to the public health response, recognizing the county is the lead local agency when it comes to this, but the city can certainly be assistive in the county's efforts. And I certainly appreciate, again, Greg's leadership as well as Supervisor Fletcher's in dealing with the pandemic. I hope the city under my leadership can be a strong partner, both when it comes to education and also when it comes to enforcement, recognizing the vast majority of businesses are following the public health order and doing their part to try and contain this virus. And yet some, of course, do not. And that's unfair. And of course, I worry about a world where we ignore people who ignore the law. I think one of the things that unite us as Americans is the fact that we believe in the rule of law, and that we think that if we don't like a law, we're to change it, not ignore it, because it may be public health orders from Dr. Wooten today. It could be your neighbors violating code in your community tomorrow, but it could be something significantly more impactful in the future. And so I look forward to being a key partner in making sure that we continue to educate and enforce until we put this pandemic behind us and get our community back on track. And of course, that involves economic stimulus. And this is certainly where I think South County can be truly catalytic. A couple of things that we're doing. I've announced the senior leadership of my administration more than a week ago. Many of you are familiar with Paula Villa, who has been the vice president at our Chamber of Commerce. Paula is many things, but one of the things that she is the leader locally for a binational relationship and border issues. Selecting Paula, I selected her because she's the best person for the job. But it is beneficial that she understands our border and our binational relationship, and that she's bilingual and bicultural. I think hopefully it sends a strong message to what I said a moment ago about the attention, time, and priority I want to provide to our South Bay communities in the city of San Diego, as well as our South Bay partners like the South Bay cities. By having a chief of staff in Paula who really understands and gets that. I also appointed Nick Serrano as my deputy chief of staff. Some of you may know that Nick is a South Bay native. He grew up in Chula Vista, graduated from Southwestern College. His family continues to live in Chula Vista. And as Greg knows, his mom is a retiree from the county of San Diego, working in the sheriff's department for many years. And so Nick's roots are deep in our community, but those are particularly true in the South County, and I think that will accrue to the benefit of many of the folks who are here. And lastly, we appointed Jake Goldstone, who is a name that many of you may remember as our Chief Operating Officer. Jay is doing this as an interim capacity. He's currently a retiree for the city, but as someone that's going to be sworn in next Thursday and immediately has to provide guidance on a mid-year budget adjustment. The city's running a fairly significant deficit for our mid-year, as well as propose a new fiscal year 22 budget about 6 weeks after being sworn in. I don't think this is a time for newbies. I think it's a time for an experienced hand to help me get through this early phase of my administration while we do a national search for a chief operating officer who can help us the remainder of the way. Jay is already working around the clock on our behalf. That's what you'd get when you hire a workaholic, and I think that was a good hire. And so we're going to hit the ground running next Thursday, making sure that we balance the city's books effectively, recognizing that many of our South Bay neighborhoods are most vulnerable, both to COVID, as well as having dealt with long-term and historic and structural disinvestment, which as we consider budget reductions, I think should be taken into account, and that these reductions are necessary balancing measures are done with a lens of equity, as opposed to the sort of across the board reductions that are, I think, all too common and not necessarily the most sophisticated way to balance a budget. The last couple of things I want to mention are just some campaign promises I'm hoping to follow through on, and then some vision pieces. In terms of campaign promises I hope to fulfill, many of you have heard me in the campaign trail, and I see many of you were helpful during the campaign, and thank you so much for your help. My interest in building a world-class transportation system, and one of the ways of trying to effectuate that is by being a leader at Sandag. I hope to work in the next number of weeks to do precisely that, and making sure, again, that South County point of view is present at the table, as well as a vision of one that is for a transportation future that is much more multimodal. I think that this is important and it's urgent in the sense that public infrastructure is a great catalytic way to get an economy going back again. It's certainly a way to put a lot of folks to work in good paying jobs quickly. And it's critical for our climate action plan. It's critical for economic development. It's critical for the preservation of our quality of life. And so I hope to be able to report back to you all soon that we've been able to secure a position to really make sure that this vision of a world-class transportation system is one that we can bring to bear sooner rather than later, recognizing that a lot of our transportation infrastructure needs are along our border, particularly Otay Mesa 2, as well as the surface road improvements through the Otay Mesa area. These are things that have long lingered that need to have resolution. And again, using that role and that bully pulpit, both of the mayor's office, leadership at Sandag, and those connections at the state and federal level, I'm hopeful we can put some people to work during a time of high unemployment and get ourselves a transportation system that will better support our economy, our climate plans, and our quality of life goals. The last thing I just want to mention, because I recognize these things are best when there's Q&A, and I want to make sure we leave plenty of time. And I think Greg has oiled up his throat, so he's probably ready to field your question and impart lots of good advice after a long career in public service. My operating vision for this job, and the priority, of course, is defeating COVID. Priority, of course, is to get our economy back on track. We must not lose sight of the need for racial justice and leading when it comes to issues of police reform and reducing structural racism where we can. We have a climate crisis, and of course, we have a housing affordability and homelessness crisis. These are all top of the list priorities. But if I had to describe our city's main challenge, our region's problem, is that too often we see ourselves as a small town when in fact we are the 8th largest city in the country. We are a major American city, a global city, a world-class city. My hope is that we can start acting accordingly. I reflect on the fact that we just finished a 22-month-long campaign for mayor, and much of that campaign was spent debating scooters and vacation rentals. And I want to show respect. Those of you that don't like scooters, or those of you that have a loud vacation rental next to your home, I know these are issues. I know that they are, and I pledge to you that we'll work to address them. But I want you to acknowledge that those are not the biggest issues facing our community. And that when we tackle and address those issues that long bedeviled us, like vacation rentals, that we can get that off the civic list of things to do. And we can take that time, those resources, and commit them towards the problems that we really have that are very pressing. And again, from where I sit, it's the pandemic, it's the recession, it's racial injustice, it's climate crisis. And I want to end on housing affordability and homelessness. It's interesting to me that no matter where I've gone, even after March and the onset of the stay-at-home order and COVID-19, the most common thing I get asked about still is homelessness specifically and housing affordability more generally. And it's interesting, I think in this campaign between two Democrats for mayor, something that our city's never really seen before, the true difference came down to whether or not you believed housing was a problem or whether you thought that things were generally fine. And I think that my selection, by a relatively wide margin, I think was an endorsement of the fact that we need strong action when it comes to housing and housing affordability. And I want you to hear from me specifically that I believe that the housing crisis is most clearly seen by homelessness and the over 8,000 people who are unsheltered in our region. But it's probably most impactful to the hundreds of thousands, if not more than 1 million San Diegans who are housing insecure, who are a rent increase away from becoming homeless themselves, or who can never foresee being able to buy a home in this community. And, you know, I happen to be the son of a maid and a gardener, two people who were able to work hard and buy a home in San Diego 30 years ago. I think if we're all honest with ourselves, a maid and a gardener could not do that today. And I think that's a shame. And I think that we collectively have to commit to doing the work to make sure that more working and middle-class people can see a future for themselves in San Diego. Because this is an EDC, I think you recognize this is an economic development issue. The most job creators I talk to tell me that their ability to recruit and retain talent is largely determined by our housing prices and the lack of affordability. And so you will see an aggressive effort on part of my administration to address the humanitarian crisis that is our homelessness crisis, but with a real focus on making sure that working and middle-class people can afford to live here. Those people for whom they can't afford the luxury apartments that we seem to build so easily, and who don't qualify for any of the programs that we have available because they earn too much. That's where our focus and attention has to be. That's my pledge to you as the next mayor of San Diego. And I appreciate you letting me share some of these thoughts and ideas with you. And I certainly appreciate being able to share the screen today with a legend like Greg Cox. So if I may, I'll throw it back to you all for some Q&A, and I look forward to any questions you guys have.
Thank you, Mayor-elect Gloria and Supervisor Cox. I would like to, before we take questions, acknowledge that we've been joined by Mayor Dedina and Mayor Salas. And thank you both for attending this meeting as well. And with that, I would like it to open it up to the first and most anxious person for a question for Supervisor Cox or Mayor-elect Gloria.
Happy to get us started.
Thank you, Carl.
So I'll start off with a question for Supervisor Cox. So I want to say thank you again for joining us today and also for your longstanding service. I think, you know, in the time that I've come to know your leadership, you've been steady, you've been strong, and you've been out and about in the community with a lot of your team members as well. So my question to you is, you know, with that steady leadership and knowledge that you've had over the last decades, can you share about how and if your team is working with Supervisor-elect Vargas and, you know, discussing, implementing, and transitioning to, you know, get her up to speed, you know, come the new year?
Sure, absolutely, Carla. Thanks for the question. The week after the election, I think that first weekend I called Supervisor-elect Vargas and asked her if she would like to get together, and we kind of start beginning the transition. So I think about 2 or 3 days later, it was literally a week after the election, we had our first meeting with her. And it was a great opportunity to kind of share with her a little bit more about the county. I know she's getting briefings from our chief administrative officer and the department heads. And then we're gonna follow up, I think the week after next. She's gonna come in and spend a good part of a day with me to take a look at the projects that we have under development right now and some under construction, particularly in the parks area and public works. I know that she's in the process of hiring her staff, which is a good thing, and we're gonna be more than happy to work with her and her new staff to make sure there's a very smooth transition. Coincidentally, on the Monday of a week from next Monday, I was able to call Chief Roxanna Kennedy from the police chief of Chula Vista, and both Nora and I are going to go over and take a look at what Chula Vista is doing, particularly with drones, which are it's really phenomenal. Mayor Salas and the city council, I know, has given a lot of support to the police chief on developing that program. And I think it has a lot of implications for a quicker response for police and certainly helping people in distress. I know Supervisor-elect Vargas is a member of the Southwestern Community College Board and was somewhat aware of it because I think they've allowed a Southwestern to be one of the sites for deploying drones for Eastern Chula Vista. So it's going to be a very smooth transition. It's not going to be like at the federal level. We're more than happy to share the information we have and bring her up to date on the projects that are underway. And I'm sure she's going to have a lot of projects to run over the next few years.
Thank you.
Go ahead. Can anybody jump in with questions? If not right away.
Well, I have another one.
Oh, great.
I came ready. So this one's for Mayor-elect Gloria. So I recently read your feature in the New York Times, and I've really enjoyed it. Just showcasing how much of a vision you already have, and even more than that, the actions that you want to take into place. So you kind of touched on it, you know, with as we look at economic vitality and homelessness and affordability, you also highlighted as a collaboration and working with schools, because schools educate our, you know, our residents, our youth, and ultimately help to establish a great city. So I was wondering if you could elaborate a little bit more. While you don't directly, you know, oversee how schools are run and operated, but you sort of alluded to a vision and plan there. So I was hoping you could share that with us.
Sure. Appreciate the question. And yeah, I always want to honor and acknowledge that we have a separately elected school boards who are responsible for leading our schools. But my general observation is that as mayor, my responsibility is to build a great city. And you can't do that without great public schools. And so you won't hear me just sort of wash my hands of public education and say, not my problem, go see the school board. I'd rather be collaborative with them. I think that's particularly urgent right now, where so many of our public schools have not reopened to in-person instruction and can't for a variety of reasons, not the least of which is the lack of federal relief to provide them with the resources, specifically the testing, the contact tracing, and the personal protective equipment needed to reopen. And I was on the phone this morning with the city's lobbyists back in Washington, D.C. I was putting in a plug to say, you know, it's not just whatever the city may need, which we need many things, but if you did nothing else, put the schools first. Because I recognize that the inability to send our kids back to the classroom is harming their education. It's harming the people's ability to go back to work themselves. It's harming the ability for some businesses to reopen. And so we need to take care of that. And we should play an assistive role. And Carla, I would just maybe conclude by giving you an example of how this has worked in the past. And I'm hopeful to replicate or maybe take it to the next level. You know, many of you, the small town mentality I was talking about a moment ago often is most manifested by the number of things that we talk about endlessly but never resolve. Convention center expansions, airport improvements, sports stadiums, vacation rentals, etc. One for a very long time that was on the civic list of things to do was a new central library. And we had been long discussed for, I think, literally my entire lifetime. I think if you went back, you'd find a staff report from the late 1970s suggesting that we needed a new central library. Well, I had to oversee the dedication of our new central, or no longer new, 5-year-old central library in downtown San Diego. And Carla, I'll tell you that that was only possible because after a lot of money from the city, a lot of state grants, a lot of philanthropy, we were still about 20 million bucks short on actually financing that project. And what happened was a relationship with Richard Barrera, our school board member, and a happy convergence of needs. The school district sees the growing population in downtown San Diego, where we have over 30,000 residents today, when just not that long ago, we didn't have very many people, and they need additional school space. Well, this 9-story building had 2 floors that we could dedicate for that purpose. So what we did was get the remaining funding that we needed from our partners at the school district, construct a new central library that includes a first of its kind public charter school inside the library, and actually has now graduated hundreds of kids from that school. I give this as an example of a collaboration that shouldn't be a once a generation kind of collaboration, but should be sort of standard operating procedure. And I think that we can do much more of that going forward. And quite frankly, I think the 21st century is about that. It's about collaborating, it's about leveraging, it's about partnering both in the public and the private sector to get big things done. And I believe that that relationship between the city and the school district is a way that we can get more big things done.
Thank you. We have plenty of time for more questions.
I'll do one, John.
Okay, Kevin.
Well, first, Supervisor Cox, when I started my business in 1990, you were the mayor of Chula Vista. And I know over the years you did a lot of really big projects, but I can tell you from the small business community, we always loved the fact that you were always supportive of small business and always encouraging. And I want you to know how much that means to everybody out there. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for everything you've done for us.
Wow. Thank you, Kevin. And you said it exactly right. I mean, small business is the backbone of not only South County, but the entire county and the entire country. And, as you as somebody that graduated from Bonita Vista High School, I think you had a good education. Obviously, you had a lot of support from your family and opening up the business. And it's been great to see you thrive and the success you've had down there. It's great to see that, and I just really congratulate you for all the good things you're doing.
Thank you. And Mayor-elect, the question that I have for you is, I have two questions. One, obviously, as small business owners, it's super hard to have all of your employees to come back without the schools being open. And as we start transitioning to the point where schools are going to be opening, how do you see helping those school districts do that in a very health safe way? And then the other question I have for you is, how can the business community support you in your endeavors?
Well, it's very kind of you to ask, Kevin. So much of what I was saying to Carl, I think is true here. I think that the city can play an assistive effort with our school districts. A couple of things that come to mind. Number one is, working with our state partners to get the reopening guidance that we need. We have some parameters in place. I think the more we learn about COVID-19, the more we need to adapt and modify those reopening guidelines, hopefully make them more feasible than they maybe presently are. And so that's one. Second, certainly advocating at the federal level for the kinds of relief that we know that they need. You saw what the CARES package was able to do in terms of providing, we didn't see a lot of teacher layoffs, at least not yet. You saw the provision of a lot of laptops and Wi-Fi hotspots. Thanks again to Cox for helping with some of that to allow for the virtual learning. But now we need a new federal relief to be able to get kids back in the classroom, get teachers and faculty back in the classroom to do it safely. And again, from what I observe, that's really about testing capacity. A lot of our private schools have been able to reopen because they have the resources and the scale to be able to do that. We need to replicate that at the public school level. And that's going to take a lot of advocacy at other levels of government that, happens to be a part of, my professional background and maybe an area where I can be helpful. And so I think some of that, I think it's interesting. UCSD has a partnership with the city of San Diego to provide testing for our city employees. We could potentially leverage that relationship to include San Diego Unified and perhaps other school districts to get them back into position. So I think a lot must be done. And I think it would reflect well upon the community if, as we reopen bars and restaurants, that we also endeavor to reopen our schools, recognizing the importance they are for our economy. To your kind invitation, I would simply ask for a line of communication, which I believe that we have, but being purposeful about it. I think one of the hardest things, and people like Greg who've done this work for some time know that you're only as good as the information you have. And hearing from folks like yourself who are dealing with this daily, I think I generally understand what we can do to help the community recover. But you're living this every day. It's a very dynamic environment. And I think that when I got a phone call back in March from the local restaurant association saying, hey, I know this is a crazy idea, but would the state ever consider allowing us to do off premises alcohol sales? And could we potentially do food serving outdoors? My job isn't to render judgment on that stuff. My job is to advocate. And we were able to successfully advocate for modifications to the code to allow those things to happen. And while it hasn't been perfect, it certainly allowed more businesses to stay in business and allowed quite a few more businesses to hire more people than they would have otherwise. I want you all to envision or think about what are the other ways that government, particularly the city, could be helpful elsewhere. I think a lot of what we've seen in terms of a customer service can-do attitude from the city with regard to waiving permitting and fees to allow these outdoor establishments to operate, maybe that shouldn't be just pandemic special. Maybe that should be the standard operating procedure. And so, again, line of communication, real time here, this is what we're seeing, this is what we're experiencing, and always solutions. We won't be able to implement all of them, but I sure as heck want to give it a try. When Greg was saying a moment ago, I know he's not kidding. If he's got 3 weeks of overlap with me, I'm sure he's got a long to-do list. To-do lists are fantastic. They are measurable, they're implementable, and I hope that you'd come with some suggestions in the ways that we can be helpful to you. Again, look at the success with takeaway cocktails and outdoor dining. Let's find more ways that we can support people. The situation we're in is very temporary, and so there's nothing that really should be off the table as we consider how we can best support people to stay in business and hire more San Diegans.
Thank you. Look forward to working with you.
Likewise.
Vic?
John, this is Vic. First of all, I want to thank Supervisor Cox for all of his service, and thank you for allowing me to represent District 1 as a past commissioner on the flood control. And my question for you, Supervisor Cox, is with your distinguished career, what are you most proud of accomplishing in South Bay? And with Mayor-elect Todd, Gloria, very happy to see you become our mayor. Looking forward to working with you. And if there's anything I can do to help out the city, please don't hesitate to call me. And my question to you, Mayor-elect Todd, Gloria, talk about helping our economy and putting jobs with local folks here. So I'd like to hear a little bit more about how you plan to get more local folks business for San Diego. So back over to you, Supervisor Cox. What are you most proud of?
Well, Vic, thank you for the question. It's kind of hard to pick one thing, so if you'll bear with me, I might want to list a couple of things. I mean, I think one of the things that you learn very quickly in local government is you do have the ability in a short period of time is to focus on projects and get them done. Very proud of the what is now the Living Coast Discovery Center and the success that it's had over the last 30 years. I think I may have mentioned I was involved with Supervisor Ron Roberts in setting up the San Pasquale Academy for our older foster kids that have gone through multiple placements. I'm proud of that. I love projects, whether they're trails, a bicycle skills park. We just opened up on the Sweetwater Regional Park. We're building another bicycle skills park in the Otay Valley Regional Park. These are the first bicycle skills parks in San Diego County. We're working on the 2 campgrounds I mentioned at Otay Lake Park with the Boy Scouts and the Tijuana River Valley. Both of those should be done in the next couple of months. The one at the Boy Scouts camp is going to have a zip line, which will be a new thing for, I think there's only one other zip line in San Diego County at one of the Indian reservations in North County. Working on another zip line that'll be tied into the Sweetwater Summit Park campground that's going to be expanded. That'll be the first campground in the county that is totally self-supporting. We're going to put all photovoltaic, so they'll be able to generate not only the energy they need, but be able to put more back into the grid. And then with the revenues that come in from the rentals, it'll be completely self-supporting for the staffing and all the other things. So there's a lot of things that I've had my finger in over the years. And again, parks, trails, bike paths, libraries, those are the things that I really look back with a real sense of pride and accomplishment.
And I know that's just the tip of the iceberg, because I could think of a couple of things I got involved with Greg that was good. But that's the benefit of a long tenure in public office. Vic, good to see you, my friend. To your question, I've said a couple of times already that I'm hopeful for additional federal relief. I think Greg said it as well. But hope ain't a strategy, right? And if recent history says anything, God help us in terms of their ability to deliver on what we need. I'm hopeful, but we need to find local forms of economic stimulus that can help us. And whether that's stuff like I was sharing with Kevin in terms of outdoor dining and the like, I think one of the best ways that we could help at the city have a local economic stimulus package beyond the infrastructure projects I was mentioning a moment ago. Let us never forget Sandag's annual budget's in excess of $1 billion. That's actually about the size of the city's general fund. It's a big agency, and to the extent that we're getting those dollars out the door on projects, it's pretty important. But Vic, I think you well know the city spends nearly $500 million annually on contracts, supplies, and services. And while we have long used an appropriate measure of lowest cost as our measuring stick for contracts, I would recommend a best value approach where best value is determined by local spending. And what I mean by that is imagine the ability to focus and concentrate as much of that spending within our city or within our region, rather than spending those dollars outside of our state or outside of our city, spending them in local businesses to help them hang on, help them to hire a couple more people who in turn would get a paycheck and spend it here in San Diego supporting our neighborhood economies. This is stuff that we don't need Sacramento or Washington's authority or approval to do. We can choose to do it ourselves. I think that that's one way that we can be assistive at the city. And again, $500 million is no small amount of money. That's a significant amount of funding. I think, again, it could be a form of local economic stimulus that can help us get our economy back on track.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Well, I think we have time for at least one more question. So if there's anyone who would like to send this off, please speak up.
I will.
Go ahead.
Hi, Supervisor Cox. Thank you for all you've done for the Workforce Partnership. Many don't know, but he really saved us years ago when we were in some tough times and steered us through. And I can't thank you enough for all you've done and continue to do. And I'm glad you pointed out San Pasqual as one of your highlights. You've changed lives, through what you've done, through making that model work. So just thank you so much for your many years of service, sir.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to work with you and be on your board. I was a part of the Workforce Partnership Board that hired you. I think we made a very good decision a good number of years ago, and it's great to see you still there plugging away, doing a great job. I sincerely appreciate it.
Oh, thank you very much, sir. And Todd, great to see you, and so thrilled that you're going to be taking on the helm. And with the challenges ahead, do you look to any other cities or regions that we could take some best practices from and all that you've seen out in the country during this very dark time?
Well, there's a lot of areas, but Peter, first off, thank you for what you do. And I know that it's difficult economic times when you and your team get super busy helping to get people job ready, get them the certifications and the skill sets they need to get rehired. And I think particularly as I consider our hospitality industry that has been the hardest hit and will be the last, I think, to fully recover, there's gonna be a lot of responsibilities on your shoulders, and I look forward to working with you to do that. I think a lot of folks do things well. I think one of the things I think about when it comes to workforce development is the relatively modest sum the city spends on youth employment, and the fact that if we did what our peer cities do in terms of investment, we could put a lot more young people to work on pathways to careers that I think are sustaining. And while the city's budget is relatively austere for the next couple of years, we're not talking about a substantial investment. I mean, if it's a $1.4 billion general fund budget, our current $250,000 commitment, I don't think quite matches the 8th largest city in the country's commitment. And if we did something similar to what Chicago, Washington, D.C., or others do, we would end up serving hundreds, if not thousands of more youth at a time when I think that's probably pretty important. And the return on investment for that, I think, is substantial. But my true answer to your question, Peter, is that my hope is after my time in the mayor's office, that we will cease being a city that seeks permission to do things because Portland or Denver or Austin has done it. And instead we be a city that's brave enough to experiment and to try and do things that maybe no one else have tried before, and allow us to maybe be successful every now and again. The quickest way to get something done around here is to say another city did it. I'm hopeful that we'll do a few things, recognizing that we will make mistakes and we will fail. My commitment to all of you is that when that happens, we'll be transparent. The buck will stop with me. I'll tell you what we did wrong and what we're doing to fix it and how we'll never do it again. But I think that this time that we find ourselves in, where so many people are hurting, we have to get innovative, we have to get entrepreneurial, and that's going to mean not having a lot of models out there for what we're trying to do, but doing stuff with the confidence that if we get it done right, other cities will follow our lead, and they'll start asking, what's San Diego doing about youth employment, about workforce training, about workforce development, about homeless solutions, et cetera. So that would be my goal, and I think that's fitting with this vision of a big city that acts accordingly, rather than a big city that masquerades like a small town.
That's great. And Todd, if I may, if I'm not mistaken, you had a youth internship at the county that really got you on your way to stay in public service. And I think that's such a phenomenal story and example of what we can do when we expose youth to great careers.
100%. You have a mind like a steel trap, Peter Kallstrom. It is a true story. I worked for 6 years at the County of San Diego. It was a great gig. That was, I sometimes wonder why I didn't stay there. But it did start as a summer youth employment opportunity. And I got placed in the Department of Social Services. I got to work with people like Cecil Stepp and Harold Tuck. And can you just imagine what it was to be a 16-year-old kid to watch pros like those two gentlemen at work? And yeah, it 100% set me on the path that I'm on today. And I think it's probably why I'm passionate about trying to figure out more ways to have young people have that opportunity. And hats off to the county for having long had an exemplary student work program that gives opportunities to kids. Let's find some more ways to give kids those opportunities. That gets back to the point I'm making about working in middle-class people having a place here. That wasn't necessarily means tested. It gave me the chance to get my foot in the door. And I'd like to think we're better off as a community for doing it. I know I'm a better public servant for having gone through that process.
That's awesome.
Well,
Thank you.
with the County of San Diego is what you're saying.
That is a fair statement, Greg Cox. It is a fair statement. Yes.
Very good. We're very proud of you.
Thank you, sir.
Well, thank you both, Supervisor Cox and Mayor-elect Gloria. It's been a pleasure having you as our bookends to our continuing efforts to have our members meet our elected officials. And to Greg, you're going to be sorely missed. All of us in the South Bay are sad to see you go, but knowing who you are, I'm sure that you'll be no stranger to the South Bay. And to Mayor-elect Todd Gloria, we are looking forward to your dynamic leadership, your new style, and your new can-do effort. And we wish you the absolute best of luck as the incoming mayor of the city of San Diego. And with that, I want to thank all the members of South County EDC who have made these events possible and supported us through the years, and especially Cox Communication for putting on this meeting with our elected officials. And with that, everybody have a safe drive home, or if you're not driving home, take a walk around the house and come back and have a glass of wine.
Great.
Thank you all. And,
Thank you,
it's been a
John.
pleasure.
Hi, thank you for joining.
Bye.
Thank you all. Happy holidays.
Bye, everyone. Happy holidays. It was great to see everyone.